This is a Film Stories original podcast.
How many discounts does USAA Auto Insurance offer? Too many to say here. Multi-vehicle discount, safe driver discount, new vehicle discount, storage discount, legacy.
How many discounts will you stack up? Visit USAA.com/auto discounts. Restrictions apply.
Welcome to Season 13 of the Japan on Film podcast. I'm your host, Perry Constantine, and I'm coming to you from the future just to give you a little bit of a brief disclaimer before we get started. There seem to have been some issues with the recording on my end of this episode. I think Zoom had recorded off of the wrong audio source. I think it might have been recording off of my webcam mic as opposed to my actual audio mic. So because of that, my audio is a little bit distorted in this. It's not unlistenable, it's just not as clear as it usually is. I've tried to clean it up as best I can, but it's just wasn't able to really do a whole lot with that. So just want to give you a heads up before you get started as just a note to please be aware of that. And with that out of the way, on with the show.
Welcome to the Japan on Film podcast. I'm your host, Perry Constantine, and today I am welcoming a new guest, and that guest is Warren Badenski. Warren, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
I am very excited to talk about this movie. This is a movie that has been living rent-free in my life ever since I first saw it about 20 years ago or so. And that film is Takashi Miike's 2003 Gozu, or the Japanese title, Gozu極道恐怖大劇場, which literally translates to Yakuza Horror Theater Bull's Head. So we'll talk about that. But before we get too much into this movie, because there's a lot to talk about with this, why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself?
So I'm British. I'm a filmmaker, or sort of just started becoming a filmmaker. I made a movie back in 2016 called Simon, which is a little horror thriller that's made its way to Netflix in Europe 2 years ago. So it's still going there, but it's on Prime and everything. And I'm just getting my second film out, which is kind of in a similar vein to this one, a little psychological horror thriller called Dead Name, which is on Blu-ray and DVD in the US and should be streaming sometime in the next few months. But because we're a little indie film, it seems like we don't get any information until it's out. So
we record these episodes way in advance. So for anybody who's listening, just, that might be available on streaming by the time you listen to this.
With any luck, it will be.
Yeah, hopefully. So how did you get into filmmaking?
So it was something I always wanted to do as like a kid. I was always interested in films. Originally, I wanted to be an actor. Like I discovered actors through Harrison Ford, my mum having to be a fan. So we had Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and Blade Runner, which were like my favorite films when I was 5. But my mum was like, "It's the same person." And then I just got major stage fright of actually acting. And so I decided I wanted to be the person who told actors what to do, which again through like Steven Spielberg, when I was able to show me who that sort of person was, because Jurassic Park was huge when I was a kid, so you had like the big making ofs and things. And I've always just been interested in writing stories as well. And then I sort of, as a college age, I managed to get hold of a computer, camera, made silly little shorts with my friends, and then went to London to seek fame and fortune and made what I considered like a first real serious short, which was like the basis for Simon, and just sort of networked, met actors and things, became a camera operator on a bunch of little indie films, and then got the chance to put Simon together, and then carried on with Dead Name, and yeah, just kind of managed to wrangle my way into it, I guess.
Very cool. I dabbled in some short film type things in university. But one of the things that struck me is compared to, because I'm a writer by trade, is that it's just so much easier to just write something out and then let somebody else deal with it. Because I remember I managed to complete one short film out of all the projects that I tried to do. And when you're working with, no budget and friends, it's very difficult to kind of get things all sorted together. And just to do one 12-minute short film took like 2.5 days of shooting and then like a week of editing. So it's just like, I think I'll stick with novels and scripts. It's a little bit more my wheelhouse.
Yeah. So I cannot do novels. I wanted to be an author at first because that was the first things I ever read, like everybody does. And like I just can't do prose, but so script writing works so much better for me, where I can get the basics down and know how to describe everything.
I definitely prefer script writing to prose writing, but again, it's easier to put out a novel than it is to get a screenplay produced or a comic script produced.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, but my background in writing is mostly in screenwriting. I've got a master's degree in it, so that's what I love doing. And I'm someone who I love writing dialogue. I'm not really much a fan of writing description, so screenplays are definitely something that I remember when I was doing my master's course. A bunch of the other students in the online forum that were talking about how, it's so difficult to get this. I'm just like zipping through it. It was nothing for me.
Excellent. Yeah, writing I find easier these days. I remember failing on a load of scripts back in the day. Something that felt like, a magnum opus turned into like 40 pages. And now I'm being stuck on like my latest project. We're trying to get it as close to 100 pages as we can. I'm like, how the hell do I fit any story into this? So by the time we start, we're done.
Yeah. But that's the nice thing about writing too, is the more you do it, the more comfortable you become with it. It starts to become a lot easier. Because I do remember after finishing my first novel, just like, how am I going to do another one of these? And then just doing more and more, and then just you get into rhythm, and next thing you know, you're producing several at a time, and the same thing with screenplays. It's just any type of skill. Once you get more used to doing it, and the ideas you have while you're writing, they spur other ideas, I find.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So much so. You're like, this scene doesn't fit, but my God, this worked so well in this kind of story. And then you sort of I don't know if you get it, but I sometimes end up abandoning one, starting the other, and then going back and forth. Yeah.
Yep, many times. I've always got that thing. The famous meme with the guy and his girlfriend, and he stares at the other girl walking by. That's me with my writing projects.
Yeah, I get that.
But anyway, so what about Japanese movies? What is your history with Japanese film?
I came I say fairly late to Japanese film, or what I consider fairly late was I didn't have Japanese, so I did film studies at college. But over here in the UK, we sort of start college about 16. I think it's kind of bumped to 18. Like a lot of the A levels that we do in college are now sort of incorporated into the final years of school. But at least at my school, it wasn't. And we went to what we call college. And I took this film studies course because I was hoping to learn filmmaking. It's actually more about film criticism and, reading the subtext and all that jazz. But we had a foreign films section, and it could be any sort of country, but our teacher was really into Japanese film. And he caught us all out on day one, where he's like, how many of you watch Japanese films? And like half the class are like, yeah, we watch Jackie Chan movies. He's like, that's Hong Kong. And they're like, oh, none of us have watched it. So I think my first Japanese film was Takeshi Kitano's Zatoichi. Zatoichi? Zatoichi?
Zatoichi, yeah.
Zatoichi, yeah. Our teacher called it Zatoichi. So for years, I kept thinking like everybody else was wrong. And then I started being like, well, maybe all these other people who like have done more Japanese stuff might be in the right. And it's just us who are wrong. But yeah, that was my first steps. And then Battle Royale was sort of like the next one. And obviously we had anime over here, which we didn't realize was sort of like Japanese in origins at first. Pokemon, everything being so big before you realize that, that comes from another place. But yeah, I think, college was my first steps. And then we got to see things like Tokyo Drifter as well, which none of us were old enough to appreciate at the time. You know, when you're sort of a teenager and you don't really get what's going on, you're just like, that's weird. But, and then, so that's how I sort of began Japanese film. And then it was like looking out for, it's like The Grudge came in. So we saw the American version of that. And then the big boom of J-horror coming over. So it's like, oh, you watch the American one, then you watch the Japanese ones when they finally come over. And for Miike himself, who's become one of my favorite sort of directors in Japanese cinema in general, actually, I think it was Ichi the Killer was our first one. We have a music magazine over here called Kerrang, which had a TV channel and a radio station and all that jazz, focused on like metal music and things, but they did a top 100 goriest horror films, and Ichi the Killer was number one. No, Ichi the Killer was like number two, and for some reason they put Texas Chainsaw Massacre as number one, and that's when we were like, nobody in this list watch this movie because there's no blood in that film. But so Ichi was my like first steps in, which is a really hard film to watch. Like, it's very gory and very crazy, things you'd never thought you'd see in film. But over here in the UK, it's cut by about 2.5 minutes. So it gets a very nonsensical towards the end. And then I eventually got a Dutch copy that was uncut, which has the weirdest English dub I've ever seen. They do an English dub with Dutch accents. So I was just like, I don't know. I haven't been to Holland too often. It's like, is English that prevalent here? That they do it with Dutch accents? Like, every film's dubbed in English instead of like Dutch.
That's very interesting. I wasn't expecting there to be like a Dutch accented English dub of an obscure, relatively obscure Japanese gonzo horror gore flick.
It was weird to find out, because I just assumed it was the English dub and that they were just putting on accents to kind of fit the fact that you're not looking at typically Western faces. But then going online, people were arguing over whether they preferred the English voice actors or the English Dutch voice actors for it.
Which side did you fall on?
I actually didn't listen to the English. I much prefer watching things subtitled, but my other half doesn't care for reading so much. So if I'm watching if I convince her to watch a Japanese film with me, we usually put the dub on if it's got one. Although nowadays a lot of them don't do the dubs anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. I found it varies. Like, there's some that they have a dub. I think it used to be more prevalent, especially. I'm not sure how it works now because I haven't gotten a newer printing of a Japanese movie from the States, at least in a long time. But I do remember when they were first coming out, the dub was very prominent on the disc, and you had to and it was like almost always the default, and you would change the settings to get the subtitled version. Whereas then over time, as the Japanese horror movie boom really kind of kicked into full effect, I think they started realizing that more and more people were preferring the subtitled version, so the dub would still be there, but it was the subtitled version ended up becoming the default.
Yeah, I think the same thing happened over here, really. Particularly on the animated stuff would usually always be the dubbed versions and things as the standard. And then the early releases, I think, are some did have the weird thing where they didn't have a dub, but also the subtitles being off was standard, which is really bizarre. But yeah, it's definitely shifted far more. Like, most of the releases I've had in the last 10, 15 years have pretty much not had dubs on them unless they were a re-release of something that already had one. I always assumed it was a cost-saving thing. They're like, oh, the people who are buying this are clearly already okay with watching something foreign, so they're probably used to subtitles. And then they just decided to cut out the dubbing altogether.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to that, because most of the audience that you're trying to sell to, they're not going to bother with the dub anyway. Why invest the money into getting voiceover actors to record it in the first place? And on the poor timing or the translations, I found that was very common with like the Hong Kong Region Zero releases, which were like STEMI bootlegs, I think, because I remember early on there was a bunch of movies that the only way you could get them was through like these Hong Kong bootlegs that you buy on eBay or whatnot, and the translations were often, the English grammar and stuff like that was often, a little bit substandard on a lot of those.
I've always wondered that. I've seen that in all the movies where it's like, that sounds off. But, there's certain phrases like, yeah, it seems like a literal translation or something, and like, that's not a phrase that kind of works. So I'm always interested when, because I've never known if something's poorly translated or not until you see a new release where it comes out and it's like, hey, it's like new translation on the box art, and you're like, ooh, because I noticed it. I think there's a couple of lines in Miike's Dead or Alive movies from the old Tartan release to the Arrow re-release got changed between the translations. But yeah, in general, I never noticed it other than it just sounds off on something, or like there's a phrase or something. You're like, I think they've directly translated that as opposed to westernized it to make sense.
Yeah, there's some stuff that, especially in Japan, and I noticed this more now that I know more Japanese, that now when I'm going back and I'm rewatching some of these movies and I see the subtitles and I hear the Japanese, I'm like, wait a minute, that is not what they said at all.
Oh, that reminds me, actually, where I have noticed it weirdly is when I had a version of the animated Ghost in the Shell that I couldn't get the dub or the subs to turn off, so they were both on. And the subtitle translation was different to the dub translation, where you get some scenes and something is completely different being said to what you can read on the bottom. I think the one that sticks in my mind is the opening where they're chatting and Major says something, and in the subtitles they say, "Oh, are you on your period?" or something. And then in the dub, they're like, "Oh, you just got some nerves." It's like, it's kind of, I guess you get the same point across, but it's completely different. Like, that changes.
It does. I remember that was when I taught Ghost in the Shell, whenever I've taught Ghost in the Shell in my film class, I have singled out that line as something to talk about because of just like the themes of, humanity and existentialism and all that. It's like, why would why would a cyborg like this have a period? Right?
Yeah.
Because if I'm recalling correctly, and it's been, at least maybe like 2 years since I've last seen Ghost in the Shell, so my memory might be a little bit fuzzy, but if I recall, I'm pretty sure they do say period in Japanese as well, but I can't recall exactly. So it was a line I specifically called out.
Yeah, I think it is the Japanese line for it is the period line. And it's been a long time since I've watched it as well. Actually.
But anyway, today we are talking, as I mentioned, we are talking about Gozu, 2003 Takashi Miike film. My memory, like, there's lots of different films where I can't recall exactly the story of how I first saw it, but with Gozu, like I said, this was 20 years ago, but my memory is still like pitch perfect. I have not forgotten a single moment of my first experience watching this film, because I had already seen Audition. That was my first introduction to Miike, and I found it my first year in university. I was living on the dorms, and my first university before I transferred, it was very close to my parents' house. It was like only about an hour drive away, so I would often go back home on the weekend. But this is one weekend I decided, I'm kind of tired. I don't feel like making the drive, so I think I'll just stay here for the weekend. And I'd gone to Blockbuster, to show you how old I am, to look for something to watch. And on the new release wall, they had Audition. And I'm just looking at this cover of this, this cute Japanese woman holding up a syringe. And I'm just like, okay. I'm like, you know what? This looks like it'll be a stupid fun horror movie that I could laugh at. Maybe there's some unnecessary nudity or something like that to titillate. Maybe it'd be a fun watch. So I got a pizza and I rented the movie and I went back to my dorm and I watched it and it freaked the fuck out of me after and so then, but I was so moved by the movie and by the story, and I looked up the director and found out it was this guy Takashi Miike. And then about a year later, a friend of mine had messaged me online, and she said, "Hey, you like Audition, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, did you know that Takashi Miike's got a new movie out, and it's playing at this art house theater, which was in Chicago?" And I said, "No, I didn't know." And I looked it up. And the description of it on the website was very kind of bare bones. And I'm like, okay, well, let me check it out. So I make the drive down to this little art house theater in Chicago and go in and see it. And the parking was like 2 blocks away from the theater. So I go in the movie, I watch the movie. The movie ends. I'm just like, okay. I just get up. I walk the 2 blocks back to my car. I get in my car, I just start driving, and it's 10 minutes after I've seen the movie and the credits have rolled before I finally just scream to no one in the car, "What the fuck did I just watch?"
Amazing. I think I had to.
Go ahead. What was your experience with it?
I think so I had watched a few Miike films at this point. Audition for sure, because I think Audition was the one where it's like, I have to see everything. And then hit his IMDb at the time being like, that's a Herculean task. But we haven't gotten a huge amount of his films here. I say that. I still managed to amass a collection of about 40 of them from the UK. But yeah, I've seen Audition, which kind of prided me. And then I'd always heard of Gozu. People were like, yeah, you think you like Ichi the Killer, but Gozu's where it's at. That's Miike's best sort of thing. And it was hard to find for a few years. And I don't think I found it till I was in my 20s. Must be, I think, just before I made Simon, 2016. So about 2014, 15. I finally got hold of a copy, and I watched it on my own in the middle of the night. And I remember being like, okay, gangster movie, didn't expect that. And then as it progresses, there are just these scenes where it's like, what the fuck? What the fuck? I just constantly, every 5-10 minutes, being like, what the fuck? What is happening? And then when it ends, and I think literally at the end of it, not quite screaming like you, but still sat there being like, what the fuck did I just watch? What was that? And then obsessing over it for days and reading all the forums and going to yeah, it must have been just forums back then of trying to find out what the fuck was that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such a unique movie, and it's and when I started watching this was the movie that really you said Audition was the one for you that really kind of got you interested in checking out a lot of his other stuff. I had not even thought of looking into his other stuff until after seeing this movie. And this, I think, was one of the films where it really kind of made me want, because this was early, this was my second year in university, so I was probably 19, 20 at the time, or maybe about 20. And I remember this was kind of the film that was kind of my turning point in being a fan of movies. Because at this point, I really started to get interested in finding out more about the different directors. And, so if you like this movie, instead of, if you like Gozu, instead of finding another Yakuza horror movie, instead just try and find more films by Miike. So that was kind of my first. That was, I think, probably around this time. I'm not sure. Miike was probably definitely a part of it. I don't think he was the only reason, but he was one of the reasons why I started to pay more attention to the directors who were making these different movies. And so after this point, I really started trying to track down a lot of Miike's films. And I think after this is when I had heard about and then saw Ichi the Killer. And then I found out about other stuff around this time, like the Dead or Alive trilogy and Visitor Q, which is completely fucked up.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even know if I can watch that again because it was just it's 10 different times of fucked up, and not in like the kind of fun way that this is. It's just really kind of fucked up.
Yeah, it has a real like existential crisis level of what the fuck every 20 minutes.
When I decided to pare down my DVD collection, I was looking for things like, I'm probably never going to watch this again. Let me go ahead and sell it. Visitor Q was one of those that I'm just like, I'm okay with selling this now. I don't think I'm going to be watching this anytime soon.
Yeah, in fact, I had a funny story of how I first saw Visitor Q, because one of my friend's sisters saw it at college, at uni, and did like a dissertation on it. And she like gave it to him being like, oh my God, this movie is like incredible. Like it's insane, but incredible. And he recognized the name. He's like, oh, that's that director name that Warren likes. And when we were watching it, we were like, what the fuck? Watched it as a group. And they're like, this guy is like super artistic. It's like, yeah, like he's super respected. And then watching it, it's like, this might be like some crazy bottom of the barrel, like heinous stuff, but there's a point.
There's a point. Yeah, I won't say that it's like it's a film that's just completely worthless, like something like, I don't know, Human Centipede, but it's just it's very difficult to watch. And it's not one that I am really excited to go back and revisit. And this one too, this was one, I don't know about you, but for me, when it came to showing these, I remember my Visitor Q story, just really funny, is I had a buddy, two of my buddies, and they'd messaged me, and just before I was going to sit down and watch it, and they're like, hey, what are you doing today? And it was a weekend or something. I said, I'm just going to sit down and watch this movie I just got. And they're like, oh, can we come over? I'm like, yeah, sure, come on. And funny thing is, one of them is like, super Christian. So he was like mortified by the end of it. I'm just sitting like, I am so sorry. I had no idea this was in the movie.
Yeah, I thought it was a family film. I mean, it kind of is.
Well, it is, yeah. Not the way you think of it. But with Gozu, this was one of those movies. This and Mulholland Drive, and I think it's a good pairing because this is a very Lynchian film. Is I would, whenever I wanted to kind of like blow my friend's mind, I would show them one of these movies. And I remember the DVD had kind of not really an explainer, but some like cultural background stuff on it, and I remember trying to explain some of the stuff to my best friend, and she's like, no, don't say anything. Just let it be. Just don't try to explain anything about it.
Amazing. Yeah, we got no explainers or anything on ours. They're just like in the UK, it's like, good luck.
So let's dive into it then. What are some things that kind of jumped out at you, or either the first time or general impressions? How do you feel rewatching this movie now?
I still really like it. I loved it the first time. I'm really desperate for a nice updated transfer though, because my DVD copy is looking rough. Now I'm used to some beautiful, like not quite 4K yet, because I'm still on a HD TV, but some nice cleaned up images, which I think has tainted it a little bit. But I really like this movie. Again, it's not one I'm going to crack out all the time, but if I'm in the mood for something weird, something in the same vein, like I go through David Lynch phases every now and again, where every sort of few months I end up watching most of his catalog, and I started switching this one back in now that I've put my Miike collection together. But yeah, I still really enjoy it. I really want to watch it with other people, but I don't have enough friends who want to sit for these kinds of movies.
That was the nice thing about discovering this when I was in university, because it was very easy to just say like, hey, let's watch a movie back then. Now it's a little bit harder as you get older. But yeah, this is a fun movie to watch with other people. That was one of my favorite things to do, because I saw this movie probably like a dozen times just because I kept showing it to different people.
Yeah. Nice. That's been me with Happiness of the Katakuris, actually.
I have never seen that one, actually.
Oh, if you ever get me back, I gotta do that one with me.
That's when I got a movie. Yeah. But yeah, this I I understand it a lot more than I did before. I think before I was kind of just very much kind of in the mindset of just kind of like, okay, none of this stuff really kind of makes sense. Now, though, when I'm watching it last night, I'm like, okay, I think I kind of get the through line that's happening here. I think I kind of understand what sort of stuff Miike is playing with. There's obviously some cultural stuff from Japanese mythology as well that works its way in there. And I think the movie, just like Mulholland Drive, the first time you watch it, it seems like utterly bonkers, doesn't make a lick of sense. But the more times you watch it, you start to figure out, oh, okay, I kind of see what's happening here. It's actually fairly straightforward in an unconventional way. And I think not quite as much with Gozu, but I think it's more straightforward than its reputation might suggest once you kind of get the through line of it.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, because obviously by the time I did rewatches, I had obsessed with trying to find out what it was about and seeing everybody talk online. And once you kind of get those details, it does feel quite straightforward of what's actually going on. You just kind of go with the dream log. Like Mulholland Drive, another one of my favorite Lynches, actually. Once you like get the gist, it's like it's very straightforward. It's in a unconventional like style, so a lot of people just like, I don't get it, instead of like just using a little bit of brain power.
Yeah, absolutely. But we'll take a quick break and then we'll come back and we'll talk more about this.
Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
And we are back, still talking about Gozu. And one of the things that jumped out at me this time, which I never really paid attention before, is the first real line of dialogue in the movie. I mean, there's, good morning and everything when they all come in at the meeting. But the first kind of like real line of dialogue where someone is actually speaking to someone else in a direct way is when Ozaki says to the boss, everything I'm about to tell you is a joke. Don't take it seriously. And I feel like that's Miike kind of talking to the audience a little bit. And it, especially because it ends then with the guy from the restaurant just laughing. It ends with a close up of him just laughing. So I feel like there's something there to it. Like he's kind of saying like, this whole thing is just kind of bullshit. Don't take it too seriously. Don't worry too much about it. Is a way of kind of like disarming the audience, I think, which, it's very much, very similar to, Midsummer Night's Dream, when at the end, when Puck gives his whole monologue and he says, if we have but offended, think but this and all his men is that you have but slumbered here while these visions did appear. So this whole idea of like, if you didn't like this, it's okay. It was just a dream. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's really, actually, I didn't think of that. At the time, I just got lost up in the moment of where he's like, don't take it seriously. And then it's like, everybody's going to kill you. Like, that seems serious, bud. But that makes so much sense. Yeah, I think that is almost a clue to let you in that, hey, we're going to go crazy. Like, chill, go with the flow bit, which makes a lot of sense with how the movie goes.
Because after that, he's dead serious, right? It's not like he is being very jocular after that moment. Like, and it seems like the boss kind of follows along with a little bit when he says like, oh, I better watch myself then. And Ozaki's like, oh, wait, no, you better get him before he gets you. And he goes out and he just stomps the hell out of this poor little chihuahua.
Oh my God, I freaked first time I saw that because of how it's shot. Because they clearly must have like picked up the real dog and then like swapped it out for a dummy, but first time watching it, I was like, oh my God, like I didn't see a switch. Like, did they just kill a dog? Is that okay in Japan? That can't be okay.
Yeah, the more you watch it, you can see it's definitely a doll that he's throwing around there.
Yeah, it's completely still and it's hitting the window and stuff. It makes me laugh as well at the same time, where it's like, it's a killer dog trying to kill Yakuza, and it's like the tiniest chihuahua.
Yeah. Also, so I think, like I said, I think the kind of key to seeing what happens in this movie is, well, there are two ways to look at it. The first is just more a literal interpretation of what is actually happening in the movie. And the second is more of like a thematic interpretation. So on a literal level, I think what we see is, and there's a mention in, I half remember this from this DVD, like explainers they had as one of the special features. And it's not so much an explainer, but it has some details about kind of like the mythology behind it. And one of the things they have there are the idea of Izanagi and Izanami, these brother-sister / lovers who were kind of like the progenitors of the Japanese celestial beings, like the Japanese god and goddesses. Like they're the ones who created the islands of Japan, where they dropped the sword in the water, and when it came out, the blood that dripped off the sword ended up the drops of water that fell off the sword, they ended up becoming the islands of Japan. And then they gave birth to some of the gods, like the sun goddess Amaterasu, Tsukuyomi, the moon god, and Susanoo, the god of storms. And these are kind of like the big three gods in like the Japanese pantheon. And then you had Izanami, the wife / sister. She ended up going to the underworld and getting, kind of trapped there. Izanagi went to the underworld to try and find her. And then when he saw her and saw like she had completely changed, and now she was like, I think like a decaying corpse or something like that. He freaked out and he ran away, and she was chasing after him. And after he escaped, she swore that, as punishment for, I will kill 1,500 people a day or something like that, or 1,000 people I think it was 1,000. I will kill 1,000 people every day until you come back. And he says, well, if you're going to kill 1,000 people every day, then I'm going to make 1,500 people every day. So that's kind of like the idea of like life and death. And that's kind of how that started. And so I think that I'm very much simplifying things, and I definitely do not claim to be a scholar of Japanese mythology but I think some of the things here are very interesting when we look at, thematically, these characters here. Like we have the brother and sister / lovers who are running the inn where Minami stays, and they're very much kind of in that way. And that inn kind of seems like kind of a gateway to the underworld, or like a headquarters maybe, or something, because I feel like these inns, once we see that after they get off the highway and they're driving in that rural area, and then they see that weird car, right? And Ozaki demands he stop, and he gets out and he says, like, that's that car. Like, the dog scene clearly shows Ozaki's going crazy. But the car scene is something different, because when Minami goes to, like, the car is just standing there. It doesn't move or anything when Ozaki forces Minami to stop. And then Minami goes over to the car, or Ozaki goes over to the car, and he pulls his gun on the driver, and it's this middle-aged woman there she's just sitting there and staring at it with a smile on her face, and she got a note. And then after Minami stops Ozaki from killing her, she drives away, but she drives away backwards. Like, she just goes in reverse and she just keeps going backwards until she goes out of frame. So I feel like this is really kind of like the gateway scene. We're seeing them transfer over into a different realm. And then when Minami gets to the river, he realizes he can't escape. And I feel like that is very key. Like, this means they are now in this underworld or whatever type of realm.
Yeah, that's the scene, because that's the scene where the boss dies, isn't he? He turns around and he's like dead in the car at that point, if I remember correctly.
Well, we don't know exactly. It's very kind of unclear because Ozaki doesn't move after that point, and then Minami puts him back in the car, and then when Minami gets to the river and he stops suddenly, then Ozaki flies forward and knocks the seat over. So it's hard to say exactly when Ozaki dies. Like, it could be like maybe when Minami jumped on him, he had shot himself or something like that because the gun went off, or if it was like, you know, trauma or if he was always like semi-dead to begin with, and then crossing over into this realm it's kind of like a supernatural death. It's very unclear. It's not spelled out in any way, but for all intents and purposes, right after that scene, he's out of commission, basically.
Yeah, and then they go into the underworld. So I didn't quite go with the underworld. My thoughts were sort of like, it's almost like a Silent Hill-esque town where it's not quite in our realm, but it's almost between worlds. And then there's a spiritual journey you sort of go on, which our lead, God, I'm terrible with names. So, but our lead guy obviously has to go on this journey of self-discovery throughout. And I think everybody there is kind of like this time I definitely was taking it more as like everybody there is some kind of spirit in some way, or they're stuck there because they haven't completed whatever journey they're on. But I more took them as not necessarily the keepers of the place, except maybe the inn that they go to. They seem to be like the keepers, and everybody else seems to be sort of like spirits that hang out there, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, well, there's that scene too when Nosechi, when he comes back and he finds Minami at the end, he talks about the waiter at the restaurants and how the waiter had died in a car accident a few years earlier, 3 years ago, and so there's that whole aspect of it. So I think really, we're looking at all these people who are dead, basically. I think also too, like, and Nosechi's face was an interesting thing too, because it's like, you know, not even half his face, but it's like the front half of his face is white, but then it just kind of like, it's just like only this part. And I'm trying to think of what that could be, like, because I mean, I feel like there is some connection to this in Japanese mythology, but I don't know enough to completely say one way or the other. So I was just kind of looking at it as almost kind of like this two-faced kind of thing, which is the thing in Japanese culture where you've got the honne and tatemae, where honne is kind of like your true face, your true voice, whereas tatemae is the face you put on for other people. And I thought that kind of serves for Nosechi, because he's very direct with Minami, and he's very much saying his feelings. Like when Minami tells him, "No, you can't stay in my room tonight," like Nosechi is very audibly offended by that. And then the next day when he says, like, "I got in an accident and it's all your fault because you wouldn't let me stay here last night," he's very direct with Minami. But then we see him with the and he tells him, like, "I didn't really want to help you anyway, so you just go do it on your own." But when he's with the other two guys in the coffee shop, he's very friendly and joking. And then we find out later that he says to Minami, they were the leaders of the bad boys at school, so I was very afraid to say no to them. So we see that idea playing out in real time with him. So I thought that was something interesting there.
Yeah, and I was fascinated by the makeup. I remembered it from the first time and just took it as like they say, like this white pigment, and then this time realized he's scratching it and it's like coming off slightly. And I was wondering if that was a Miike-ism of like the makeup didn't quite work, so screw it, we'll show it's makeup, and nobody will bring it up. But that fits that like two-face idea, which is cool. I always wondered if it's a bit, because it gave me Phantom of the Opera as well, almost like wearing a mask. So again, that fits like the double face, like a mask for one people and a mask, for other people. And I think.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just turning it off to like all the other people. I think everybody gets a little sort of interesting quirk. And then like the waiter we were talking about, is wearing women's clothes, I think, and whether that's part of their journey. And the two guys sat in their tracksuits, always talking about the weather and using the payphone all day. And the brother and sister, I think, yeah, that to me fit that like thing of like these people have journeys and discoveries that they're not going on.
Yeah, I think the waiters, because it's all three of them, right? They're all three men, and so they're all three. It looks like all three of them are basically trans women. Is kind of the I could just cross dress. It's hard to say exactly, but there's definitely that idea there, and that serves as kind of foreshadowing to what we'll see with Ozaki. And there is a trans reading of this film that I saw someone talk about on Reddit somewhere. So I'll mention that later on. But when we get to the stuff about Ozaki, but also the whole idea of, I think there's something about ingesting the innkeeper's milk, because he gets this when he's at the restaurant. Minami is given the chawanmushi, which I believe is made from dairy. I believe there's a dairy component in it, and he gets violently ill after he eats it. And I think there's something to that, because then we find out that this innkeeper, right, they're bottling her milk and they're selling it around town, obviously, because we see this kid drinking one of the bottles too. So I think there's something about like ingesting the milk is sort of maybe puts you in this place, makes you part of this place, maybe has something to do with that. And the fact that he throws it up, I think kind of puts him like 1 foot in, 1 foot out is one way to look at it. And also the titular Gozu, which is like the bull-headed guy, that is in Japanese mythology. Gozu is one of the guardians of the underworld, along with another one. There's another one too. I can't remember what kind of it, but it's another one, has a different animal head. It might have been like a pig's head or something. I can't recall.
Yeah, I did wonder what Gozu was, because I did read about it and then I completely forgot to read up afterwards this viewing. So that info went, but that makes sense. So I thought he might have been a guide or something. I knew it was something to do with the underworld. Even on a basic level of like, it reminded me of, first view reminded me of like a minotaur or minotaur, however you pronounce it.
Yeah, minotaur, yeah.
Base, at the base of a labyrinth, so almost like because it feels like he's stuck in a labyrinth trying to find his way out at times. So when he gets to the center and he finds Gozu, he's then able to start finding his way out almost. And
yeah, I feel like this is definitely a movie where he is, once he gets stuck there, I think he is, because you see he's obviously got a lot of affection for Ozaki before they even get there. And then after Ozaki goes missing, he is very intent on finding him. And it's not really illustrated. I don't even think he knows why he wants to find Ozaki. He just knows that he has to find him for some reason. And I feel like even though the whole task was to take Ozaki here and basically, get rid of him, have him killed. I feel like during the process, Minami is on this mission to seek out and rescue his lover, basically. And we'll get into that reading of it, because there is this idea too. And I remember people saying that it's similar to some stories in Greek mythology about going into the underworld and saving someone. It's also, I think also the Izanagi story, that's also very similar type of idea, where Izanagi went into the underworld to save his wife's sister. I think that makes definitely something he's after.
So they just swapped it for like husband, brother.
Yeah. And I think too, like when they find him in there, when he goes to the car crusher, the dump, and he finds out that they have killed Ozaki and they flattened his body, and it's like a dry cleaner, right? These all these yakuza bodies, they're just like suits you put on, and I feel like this is where kind of the trans idea comes in, because I never thought about this before, but there is this whole idea of Ozaki is kind of losing it. He's kind of going crazy. he doesn't seem to know where he is, what he's doing. But then when he comes back as the female Ozaki, and just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to go by the name that she gave when she was, and so the name she gave was Sakiko. So I'm just going to go with that just for the sake of simplicity. But Sakiko, you know, she seems very together. She seems very much, very confident, very sure of herself, and very, you know, she knows what to do and she knows how to handle things. She's not as unhinged as Ozaki was. And I feel like maybe this is, well, now I'm second guessing myself because then we got the ending, which we'll get to too. But there is something there where, you know, he goes through this transition. He takes off the tough guy Yakuza suit, and who he really is under that is this woman.
Yeah, no, I totally see that, and that sort of fits with how I think a lot of people who are trans kind of feel when they're in a skin that doesn't fit, and you know, they're trying things, and it becomes very sort of detrimental, even to just themselves and their relationships to people. And when they try and act like the person they're not, and when they finally get to transition stuff, they become more confident, more happy, more, you know, and then like their relationships, as long as they're not around people who are bigoted or anything, that they have supportive friends and family, everything sort of like comes together, and you know, life goes on in a much more positive way. And I think that's true of what's sort of being shown here, whether it's a trans reading or like a gay reading or anything, that once he's more comfortable in the skin that he has, or more comfortable in the skins that they have, that they all seem to get a bit more direction. Things, and like you said, you know, he becomes more calm, collected, focused, up for enjoying life, as opposed to being afraid of everything's out to get them.
And also the fact that Sakiko first appears dressed in a kimono, I'd never thought about this before, but rewatching it now, I realized, because there's something here in Japan called Coming of Age Day, and it's like this ceremony where it happens in January when people are the first year someone has turned 20. So they go to the shrine, they wear kimonos and everything, they have a party. It's basically their transition from childhood into adulthood. And it's men and women too, but there's especially a focus on the kimonos that women wear. And many of them that I've seen in photos and stuff like that, they do have kind of like this fur collar type thing like she has there. So I really feel like this is Sakiko's coming of age day. Like she has become a woman in this moment here.
That's really cool. Yeah, that totally goes with it. I didn't know about the coming of age day, but that would fit quite nicely.
And the fact that we do see those waiters there who are either trans or just, just non-binary, and they just enjoy wearing women's clothes, whatever the case is, they are serving as kind of a signal to the audience, to Minami, of what is coming later down the line. But especially when it comes to Minami, I think there is definite reading here of his sexuality, because there's a point made that he's a virgin. And, Ozaki gives him, and Ozaki is, there's a lot of like sexual confusion happening throughout the first part of the movie, because there's Ozaki asks to see his circumcised penis, and he like demands that Minami show it to him, and he's like staring at it. And then when he's in the bathhouse, the innkeeper comes in, and she's this middle-aged older woman. She comes in and she's like trying to seduce him, and so, and then of course there is Nosechi too, because he says, I want to stay here with you, and Minami says no, and he's like, I'm not going to try. It's funny. It's like nobody even insinuated you were. The fact that you suggest that you have to suggest that you are, it tells us that you've got some thoughts going
on. Yeah, absolutely. I think you saying that makes it sort of fit thematically with like, it's all people maybe repressing themselves, and their journeys are to like accept themselves. And that's kind of what we see Minami, the main guy. Yeah, Minami. Going through it. I'm terrible with names. I get names wrong all the time. It sucks. It's really bad on my own films when I'm directing actors and I can't remember their character names. As I said, they all got something that they need to kind of accept, and maybe I lost my train of thought there for a sec, but yeah, like you're saying, like he's insane. It's like, oh, I won't get up to funny business, and like you're saying, like it's nobody asks that. Like, why would you think that? You know.
And also, when he does find Ozaki's flattened body, right? The guy he's like, "Is this your brother?" And he specifically points to Ozaki's penis, right?
Yeah. It's just like, check this. So there's a lot of obsession over penises. Yeah. Which could be.
I think that's kind of what he's saying. Like, this is what you're looking for, right? This is what you want.
Yeah, this is it. This is the important bit for you, at least in one respect. But I was always shocked when they showed that scene. I was like, oh, because I always heard you couldn't show any kind of genitals in Japanese media, or if that's just like blown out of proportion.
That's true. No, you're right. And to be fair, we are looking at the version I have was a US release DVD. So I don't know what it was. I've never seen the Japanese release of this, so I'm not sure if it was blurred in the Japanese version. It's very possible it could have been. I think there's a fairly good chance it was blurred in the Japanese version. But again, I have not seen that version, so I can't comment. So I'm guessing this one that we get here, that we got in other countries, is just they just went to the original film and they didn't have to worry about the blurring effect.
Yeah, because I was curious about that, because I noticed there was 2 other times they snuck it in when the guy with the white face is reading the porn mag. There's a couple of full frontal pictures that sneak in, and when it's like, oh, did they manage to sneak that in, or did they blur that in the Japanese release?
No, the censors are pretty good about even like the smallest bits. They'll blur. Even like there's an idea that you might possibly see something, it'll be blurred. So yeah, they're very astute about that. So I think, I'm guessing if it was, again, I should probably see if I can find a copy of the Japanese version somewhere. Maybe it's on streaming somewhere here, but it'll be interesting to see like if they have those areas blurred in the original Japanese version. But also,
one more I noticed.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
As we're on this train of thought, there was one more I noticed that kind of snuck in. It's like, that's got to be a mistake. Because I was always amazed at how naked our lead character is in the bath scene, and how much they really show how naked he is without managing to like show off his penis. It's that there's one bit where he's sat down and he's scrubbing himself, and just between his legs, the little tip is just sticking out. It's like, did they like sneak that in? Like, did nobody notice that? It's like, to be fair, I didn't notice that last time. It's just this time being like really interesting how they shot it, and then just being like, like it really blends in with his leg. But it's like, did I see what I think I saw?
But also with these gay readings too of the queer context here, there's also the fact that, you know, the old man, the boss, he can't get it up unless without anal penetration, without prostate stimulation. So there's that aspect of it.
That's right. I was wondering that, because there's been all this sort of like gay metaphor. It's like, maybe that's part of it. Like, you know, he needs something inside of him, and maybe there's sort of a bisexual sort of edge, because you could almost take the characters, if you take them as representations of stuff, that, you know, the boss man could be a sort of bisexual reading. Our lead character is more like a coming of age gay reading, and then you got when we get to the end, you sort of have this throuple kind of reading, or trans sort of mixture, or even just like symbolically this gay relationship that's being thought of in a straight way. It's all really hard to explain when I try and say it out loud now. I think about it.
No, I know exactly what you mean. But there's also that scene when he finally, and also I noticed too, after Ozaki becomes Sakiko, there is this whole Minami himself becomes a much more assertive person at that point. Before that, he's just kind of like going along with things. Whenever he does try to assert himself, it comes off as phony. It doesn't really work. Like whenever he tries to act the tough guy, nobody really takes him seriously. But once Sakiko enters the picture, like when they're at that stop and she goes off with the truck driver, and Minami goes up and he shoves the truck driver away, and then he grabs Sakiko's hand and he takes her back to the car. He becomes a much more assertive individual after that point.
I wonder if that's sort of part of the kind of acceptance journey where now Ozaki's become female. He's like, oh, he can now almost be true to himself. It's like, I'm attracted to this person, and now it's how I feel it should look. And then he's able to be himself instead of playing a quote unquote different sort of person, where he's like, this is how I should act. And now he's like, oh, I can be so more comfortable with this. And then as he gets more and more comfortable in himself, that's when we get like the change at the end, I think, when Ozaki comes back and we sort of get them together.
Yeah, and it's you could look at it in a more, straight up male homosexual reading of it, where Minami is actually gay and he just can't admit it to himself. And then having Sakiko there kind of helps transition him into accepting who he really is. And then when he has sex with Sakiko, and then that is finally means that, okay, now Ozaki can be reborn and they can be together. Or you could look at it as just a pansexual reading, where it's not that Minami is gay or straight or bi, but it's just that he is in love with Ozaki specifically.
Ah, yeah, that's beautiful. I like that one. I didn't think of that. I'm too stuck in my binary thoughts, and I still need to break out into the more. Yeah, but being a pan reading, that's really good. I like that.
I mean, that's one thing that came up to me, and especially because all this, and that's because once especially because the crotchless panties that he gives Sakiko, right? He makes a point of saying, like, you gave these to me and now I'm giving them back to you, right? So it's like Ozaki said, you give these to the woman you want to have sex with, and the woman, quote unquote, woman that he wants to have sex with is Ozaki. So is the person he wants to have sex with. So he can finally give them to someone, and that is finally when he's able, and when he sees other people moving in on Sakiko, right? That again, this is him becoming very defensive of the person he loves, and this helps him realize, because before that they go to the love hotel, right? And he says, I'm sorry, love hotel. So if anyone doesn't realize this, a love hotel is a specific kind of hotel, not only in Japan, but in many Asian countries, where they're designed for short-term stays. Like, you go there basically to have sex. That's what they are. Like the no-tell motels, we used to call them in the U.S. And there are, obviously there's, it's used for prostitution. That's obviously one. Yeah, I think that's, again, that really goes towards this pan reading of the film too. That's why he is, it is Ozaki that he wants, and this transition from Ozaki to Sakiko helps him come to realize that it is Ozaki that he's really in love with. And that scene, that sex scene / childbirth scene, that is just one of the strangest scenes I have ever seen in a movie. And I remember the first time I watched this, my mouth just hanging open. All that whole thing was going on. And I remember showing this to friends, every single one of them just like, what the fuck is happening right now?
Right. Same. I was just like, oh my God, that's easy. But also like the prosthetic and everything is fantastic. The first time I was watching, it's like there's no way they just shoved him up inside her. Like, he's twice her size. Like, I actually need to be rational here. It's like, well, where's the prosthetic start? But also that weird, it's like, the first time seeing it was like, was that a hand that came out? Like, you know what I mean? And then as a filmmaker myself, it's like, I cannot fathom showing an actor a scene of this and having people go like, yeah, that's cool, man. Like, I'd love to know how a Western like person would go about this. Who you get in this kind of movie, because it's great and cool, but I could see a lot of people reading it and being like, what the fuck?
I mean, I think the use of shadow and darkness really works a lot. I think Miike was definitely making prodigious use of the low lighting there to make sure that it was lit exactly perfectly so that you couldn't see too much of the seams on what was happening. And it was done exceptionally well. Like I know, obviously, right? They probably had like a, some sort of like, cast mold or something of Himika Yoshino's lower half, and that's what Sho Aikawa's hand is coming out of, and what his head's coming. Obviously, right? But the way they film it, though, is done in such a way that you get, every time I watch this movie, I do get fully absorbed in that scene.
Yeah, same. Absolutely. Even watching it this time and understanding way more about how effects work and stuff, still like, as a person coming out of a person.
Yeah. Well, also, too, it goes back to this kind of almost like fear of fatherhood as well, because there's that aspect of it, too. Because, I mean, I don't know. Did you ever watch the TV show Scrubs?
Yeah.
Okay, so you may remember when Turk and Carla, when they get pregnant with their first baby, they're having a baby shower, and Dr. Cox and Dr. Kelso, they're telling him, they're like, you want to weigh in on the on pregnancy sex? And they're seeing, you've seen the ultrasound, right? They have hands, they have eyes. Well, how are they going to feel when they have an intruder coming in there? And they both make this motion of, and then it's just like, the baby can't grab me down there. And then he looks at Carly, he's like, baby can't grab me down there, right? So that scene popped up in my mind when I'm watching this, and it's like, okay, maybe that is kind of a fear of pregnancy sex. Illogical as it might be, that some guys might have. Like, what if the baby grabs me or something?
Yeah, it's like that old joke when a guy and a woman get together, she gets pregnant, they have sex things, and then baby comes out eventually, and as the baby comes out, taps the father on the forehead. It's like, how do you like it? And it's like, it's stupid. We know it's not a thing, but I think a lot of us still get that, like, but what if there's 0.1% that this could happen?
Or also, like, what if I hurt the baby? I remember that in Knocked Up when he says, when they're trying to have sex when she's pregnant, he's like, what if I hurt the baby or something like that? And she's like, you're not that big.
Yeah, like, there's not one on earth that's like naturally long enough to do that, I don't think.
But so there's that part of it too. And also there is this kind of Oedipal reading of this movie as well, because the whole thing is, again, in the Yakuza structure, the boss is called the Oyabun, and the word Oya is basically like parent. So the boss is considered like the father of the whole family. So there is this kind of Oedipal reading there too, where Minami has to kill the father to be with the mother, which in this case would be Sakiko Ozaki.
Ah, that's cool. I didn't even think of that one. It's, obviously got the Anarchy, like, brother translation. I never thought about Oyabun, actually. I knew it was all like family sort of titles, but didn't think of Oedipus.
Yeah, there's that. It's flipping it a little bit, obviously, but there's also the incestuous relationship between the innkeeper and her brother. There's that aspect of it too. So there's, and then this, even though they're not blood brothers, right? Biological brothers, there is this brother relationship between Ozaki and Minami, and then also, a father-son / father-daughter relationship between the boss and Ozaki Sakiko. So there's that part of it too. So there's all this, there's a lot of incest happening in this movie, or like implied incest, I guess would be the better way to say it.
Yeah, absolutely. All pretty messed up, isn't it? that little bit.
And then then we get Visitor Q where it's open incest in that.
Oh yeah, it stops being subtext and it becomes
no
actual.
But also too the fact that Sakiko, after Ozaki is reborn out of her, she dries up, and you feel like, okay, that's the end of her. But then it cuts to this overhead shot of the Tokyo skyline. I think it's Tokyo, and Minami's voiceover saying, "We put the girl in the bath, and then she was fine." And then it cuts to her in the bath just brushing her teeth, and then she drops the toothbrush in the cup, and it's a close up, and it's 3 toothbrushes. And then the 3 of them are just walking through town together, arm in arm. So there's that aspect of it too, which is interesting because there are a few different ways you can look at that too. Like obviously it could be either they are becoming, like 2 fathers to this young woman type of thing. There's that thing of it. But there's also maybe this is a polyamorous relationship where all 3 of them are together now, which also goes back to the pansexual reading of this, whereas it's not that Minami loves a type of person, it's that he loves Ozaki, whether it's the female version or it's the male version, he just loves Ozaki.
Yeah, like maybe, that whole idea, like maybe I have to go for this journey of like, well, I like them as a girl, so I still like them I can like them as a guy because it's the same person, sort of thing. I wish there was a little more in the ending because it feels like it ends really abruptly.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's a stylistic thing because there's been a few of those like early Miike films that seem to do that. If that's just a Japanese thing, or if it's just one of those like we kind of need to wrap up the film because we run out of money or something. But I just felt like it needed a little coda or something.
Yeah, I feel like it's a mix of both because I have seen other Japanese films that do have the kind of like, sudden ending to it where it's just like, wait, what? That's it? But I feel like it's a tactic that Miike especially uses a lot because I do remember this with Auditions to some extent had something like that. Not quite as abrupt, but it had a little bit of that. One Missed Call definitely had. One Missed Call has a bizarre ending that I still don't know if I fully grasp as many times as
I love that one.
Yeah.
So that one.
And so I'm not really but yeah, it does feel like it is this kind of abrupt ending, and it does have you question a lot of things that you were thinking of because, well, now Ozaki and Sakiko are each their own separate person. So is it still a trans reading of the film, or is it like it throws all these questions at you, and I'm not really sure. Maybe it's all of the above. Really, he just didn't really know which one he wanted to focus in on.
Yeah, maybe. I feel maybe Miike has his own thoughts, and then whatever we bring is our own sort of baggage to it. I think to give you which reading one. So for me, I think I really like that pan reading you mentioned. But I would think that they're not necessarily like if you take it face value, it's kind of odd. But if you take them almost as representations of a character and things, so he sees both sides and he's happy either way. You could almost have a like bisexual reading of, he likes the guy and the girl, and they like each other. Like again, take it the literal way, it's this polyamorous kind of reading. They're like, hey, either way, it's something that seems standard to most people isn't what's right to make these people, work. Their yum is something slightly different and unconventional, but it's turning out good for everyone. When they were trying to play it straight, they were sort of hurting themselves and others around them.
Well, I mean, a lot of the whole Yakuza, the Yakuza basically, you could also look at it as like a reading of performative masculinity in general, right? This whole idea, especially, this is very, topical now in the kind of era we're living in after what happened in America with the election. But there's this whole idea of toxic masculinity or performative masculinity. Like we're recording this in the end of January after the confirmation hearings of Pete Hegseth. And one of the questions one of the Republicans asked this guy was just like, how many push-ups can you do? It's like, what the fuck does that have to do with running the Department of Defense? Why are you asking that kind of... And it's just all about performative masculinity. And that's all it is. Or like Mark Zuckerberg going on Joe Rogan with like his, his gold necklace and all that, and, trying to talk about it. It's like, this is all fucking bullshit. Come on. You guys are like, and I remember the whole idea of being a man is you don't care what other people think of you. So all of this like hypersensitivity over being what it looks like to quote unquote be a man is just nonsense. And I feel like that's something that is going on here, because Minami is dressing the part of this kind of like, he's doing this performative masculinity as a Yakuza guy, right? He's wearing this like leather jacket and stuff, but it's like 2 sizes too big for him. So he looks small wearing it. He looks like a kid wearing daddy's clothes. He's wearing these like kind of like, these tinted glasses too. And it's just, I think the fact that they're not full on sunglasses, they're just tinted glasses, does something, because we see right through you guys. We're not buying any of this. And whenever he tries to act tough or anything like that, it never comes off as genuine or authentic. He just comes off as a scared little kid.
Yeah, that's right. And like, I think every time he sort of does it, he doesn't get anywhere with it either. It just reminded me of when he goes to like the police station to ask them where the gangsters are, because they went to the shrine and then got muscled out. And
and he's supposed to be this tough Yakuza. You can't even find other Yakuza in this town.
Has to go to the police to ask them. Or even they're like, oh, we don't know.
Well, actually, that's actually not that surprising though, because Yakuza in Japan, they operate different from organized crime in other places, whereas they do actually have official addresses. And so they do have like, you can look up like the location of the home office of the Yamaguchi Gumi. It's there. It exists. You can find it. So yeah, they do actually have like business cards and official offices and all that kind of stuff. So it's not that unusual that he would go to the police and ask them. But I thought the fact
that's amazing.
Yeah, I thought the fact that the cop is from Hong Kong was interesting, because there's this aspect of just like, I mean, I don't even know if that'd be possible unless he's been naturalized a Japanese citizen. So, or unless he was a Japanese citizen who was just happened to be born in Hong Kong or whatever the case is. But I thought that was an interesting thing, because normally you wouldn't see that kind of thing happen. So, so there's that aspect of it too. And this kind of idea of outsiders maybe getting trapped in this place, which could be, again, the milk thing. Yeah,
that's what I took it as, again, like people being trapped, coming in, not doing their journey. So, because he's like, oh, you're not from here. I'm from Hong Kong. But instead of going on his journey, he's just kind of assimilated into being, I guess, in this purgatory, for lack of a better term.
I think purgatory is a good thing, because that's what's thinking too. Like the two guys in the diner, right? They're just basically having the same conversations over and over again.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. Literally, as I was saying, purgatory is like, the guys in the diner.
Exactly. Yeah, they're a perfect representation of that. And I think, again, this kind of ties back to that milk thing that everybody in town seems to have drank, whereas Minami threw it up right after he had it. So I think that has something to do with it. But also there's that foreshadowing too. Again, just kind of like, I'm jumping around a little bit with some ideas I had here and there, but because there's when he has the dinner in the ryokan, there are 2 courses. There are two servings. But then when he wakes up the next day, there are 3 servings of breakfast. That also kind of, hints at this,
this
polyamorous thing that's developing. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So much I just didn't think of or missed. Like not noticing.
I mean, I feel like I could study this movie and take like a course taught by some Japanese film scholar like Tom Mez or someone like that, and I could do. I feel like they could do a whole semester just on this movie, because I think there's so much stuff that we are just barely scratching the surface. I feel like there are so much things that I'm missing here still after seeing this movie. After watching this movie for 20 years, and I don't even know how many times, I still don't know if I fully grasp all the little nuances of things that are happening in it.
Yeah. Same. Like there's so many little, even just sort of filmmaking techniques that I'm curious on what the choice is. One of my favorite shots in the film is when he gets to the place at night and they're asking if he wants a meal, things, and it's shot outside his room. And it's like a high angle looking down, and there's a light bulb in the center of the frame that covers most of the frame. You barely see anybody else. Even all the dialogue is like off screen. And it's just on this light bulb. If I remember correctly, the light bulb is out of focus and the background where everybody actually is in focus. And it starts off bright, and as the scene progresses, as he goes to bed, it then dims. It doesn't look like it turns off. It's like it dims, and that scene fascinates me. Because on paper, that shot should not work in the slightest, but I think it perfectly fits that scene. And then there's something about the fact that the light bulb is dimming. It's like, is it like, he's going from the world to the underworld, or is there something like the light of life is escaping him, or like he's something stupid? It's like he's really dim, like on his own. He had the light in front of him. If he asked the right questions and everybody's gone, he's stuck with like no guiding light in sight.
Yeah, I would really. I don't know if Miike has ever said a whole lot about what he was thinking when he was making this film. I'd be really curious if he has. I mean, I would love to just talk to him about this movie and just like, because I don't think there's a director's commentary or anything like this on anything of it. But I mean, it would be very interesting to. But I think this might be a case of just like, you know, the late great David Lynch, where I don't think he's going to talk too much about this movie. He's just kind of leave it up to other people to kind of figure out.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be surprised me if he's just forgotten so much about it, because it's what, seventh film that year.
God, the guy's got like what, over 200 films now to his name.
Yeah, I always laugh because like The Blade of the Immortal was listed as his 100th film, and if you listen to, I think it's Tom Mez on the commentary, gets very annoyed and say it's not his 100th film, it's his 100th credit. It's like, oh yeah, because he did TV shows around then too. Yeah, let's just demote the fact that that this isn't his 100th film because there's a couple of TV shows thrown in, as if that's not hard work. And yeah, like the guy's a madman for pulling off so many films in this time frame and making a lot of decent work out of them as well.
I mean,
one thing
you can't. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, they never feel like, whether some of them are crap, obviously, and some of them are fantastic, and there's a lot of in between, but there's always something fascinating and very Miike about them. Like, you never feel like they just threw in shots and phoned it in for the day.
Yeah, when you are churning out that level of product, there's going to be some stinkers in it. I mean, just the law of averages makes it impossible to do that, to make that level of content, creative works, and not have some of them that are just kind of phoned in, right? That's going to happen, obviously. I mean, I've written a ton of novels, and there are some of them that are not as good as others. And it's not because, you know, it's just because you never make 100% of the shots you take. You're going to miss some percentage of them. And I feel like that's definitely the case with Miike. I mean, and you know, say what you want about him, whether you like his movies, whether you hate him, whether you're agnostic on him, you can't deny the guy is a worker.
Yeah. I think one of the busiest directors there's ever been. I think even now, you know, he's slowed down, but it's still 2 a year or something. I think there's been a couple of years where it's been 1. Again, I don't think he's missed any years, which is nuts.
No, and I think that's also, I think also too that he doesn't dwell on this stuff too much. Like he just like, all right, finish that one, time to work on the next one. He just keeps on trucking.
Yeah, and always fascinating whenever he talks in interviews about like how weird his films are. He's like, I never mean for them to go weird. That's just how the stories are. It's just what they tell me to, like, you know, they like his thought process guides in the story, like becomes that, because that just feels the natural way to go. I always wonder, like, how many of them start off really simple and he gets in and it's like, this has gone crazy. What happened?
I imagine some percentage of them, because you look at a lot of these movies, especially his early work, a lot of it was just done for, you know, direct-to-video market. So a lot of these probably had like stock scripts or something that were just kind of crap. And I think he just kind of like punched it up with his own style and approach to it. Just kind of like, which is very similar to what the like the Pink 8 directors did too. They did something similar where they were given a mandate by the studio. It's like, here's your time limit, here's your budget, here's how many sex scenes you need to have in it. Go nuts. And that was it. And they were just kind of free to do whatever they wanted at that point. I feel like it's something similar with Miike. It's just they gave him a script. Maybe they had I don't know how it works with these studios, but maybe they have a library of scripts. It's like, go through, pick one, here's your budget, have it done by this date. And he just went through and he's like, okay, well, Full Metal Yakuza. Okay, so we're doing RoboCop as a Yakuza film, and I'm just going to do my own, play with it my own way. Or maybe this one too, it's a Yakuza gets lost in the underworld type of story or something like that. And he just put his own spin on it. Like, it could be something along those lines. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I was curious about how many, there's another fascinating shot in this one where I think it's when Minami goes to the river and he stands there and the color of the film changes slightly. But there's a little sound effect when it does it. And I was wondering, was that intentional? It's did they get the film back from the lab and they fucked it? It's gone a funny color, and they're like, no, we'll lean into this.
I didn't really notice that, but I did see other people commenting on it. So I think that has got to be intentional, especially when you see all the weird stuff that happened in this town. So I feel like that color change and that stinger sound are a way of signifying that he's in a different realm.
That makes sense. Yeah, I'll go with that.
But yeah, I mean, this is just, and it's funny because the more I think about this, the more I think, okay, this movie actually does have a lot of sense to it. So, I'm reading here the critical reception on Wikipedia, and Jeff Shannon of the Seattle Times called it an undisciplined mess, saying that it trades Lynch's nightmare logic for exasperating incoherence. And now I'm thinking oh, dude, you just weren't really paying attention, because I think this stuff is actually more straightforward than people realize. It's just, you get lost. Again, kind of like with the whole idea of, wearing the suit type of thing. It's just like you're just getting lost in the surface level stuff that you're not spending the time to really kind of do. The movie does make you work for these things. I will say that. If you're not willing to do the work, I can understand why you think it's just incoherent. But the more work I do on this movie, the more I think, I think there is some very clear themes and messages that are coming through here.
Yeah, absolutely. Even on a basic level, as long as you're just paying attention, you get something, even if you just, I was confused by that, but there's a very simple through line to point A to B to C, as long as, and that opening line of this is a joke, don't take it too seriously. So if you stop thinking how this works in real life, but you just kind of go with the flow, even if you're not getting the subtext of it, it flows nicely, I think, of he kills, his boss dies, and he's trying to find out what really happened because he disappears, and then this woman shows up claiming to be him, and then she turns into him. To me, that still makes sense if you're not getting it. You're just Magic Town.
Yeah.
I mean, at a basic level.
Yeah, you're becoming such a slave to the rules that they work in reality, and you don't realize that, they don't explain everything that happens, but like you said, Magic Town, that's all the explanation you really need.
Yeah. Once you hit that should be very strict. Okay, cool. Or if someone just goes, you remember, you played Silent Hill, right? Think that. And they're okay, yeah. That's Town. Same as Magic Town.
Yeah. And I'm reminded of, this is not related to film specifically, but I am reminded of this, the comic book writer, Grant Morrison. They had said that when adults have a possibility, I got to look up the exact quote. Okay, so I found the quote here from Grant Morrison, and what they had said was adults struggle desperately with fiction, demanding constantly that it conform to the rules of everyday life. Adults foolishly demand to know how, and again, they were talking specifically about comic book type things, but how Superman can possibly fly, or how Batman can possibly run a multi-billion-dollar business empire during the day and fight crime at night, when the answer is obvious, even to the smallest child, because it's not real. And I think that's basically what we see here too. People are trying to overly, and even us to an extent, right? We're trying to overly intellectualize this, when really it's just, this movie takes place in a world that does not conform to the rules of our reality, and you just got to go with that.
Yeah, 100%. That is actually it. And I gotta say, I'm guilty of that comic book stuff sometimes as well. But more of the movie adaptations, where it's like, these really work as like 1 or 2, 3 films. But when you start getting into like 8 or 9 continuous, the logic falls apart for me in a way that I can't ignore. But
I don't have that problem because my other podcast is specifically all about superhero movies.
Cool. Yeah.
But anyway. But still too, like the ending again, when we see the close up of the guy from the diner laughing, that's also kind of a way of reminding us, don't take this too seriously. I think it could also be just Miike laughing. He's like, I know you motherfuckers are going to be spending hours trying to figure this out, and you're not going to get
it. He's just like, good luck, fuckers.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, Warren, do you have any other things you wanted to mention about this movie? Those are kind of like it's kind of like the meat of all my notes.
Mine go to slightly more. I got a couple of thoughts, more like a technical or cultural side, like the American shop that he goes to, or the shop with the American wife. And I was there seeing the trivia where they say like her Japanese was so bad that they literally put the cards up and then like they just incorporate the cards into the scene because like her performance was so weird. And I was just like, as a guy who doesn't really speak Japanese, it sounded fine the first time I watched it. And I was curious, as someone who like is around Japanese speakers more, is her Japanese like atrocious? You're like, wow, that's stilted and weird, or like
it absolutely
gibberish.
It's so bad. Like even I couldn't even really follow the words that she was saying. It's very bad. It is, and. It's funny you say that was something they added into the film to have her cue cards up there, and they kind of like put that into the movie because I just assumed that was always intentional, not that they done that because her Japanese was that bad. But yeah, I don't know what to make of that, to be honest. That's the one thing that I have no real idea what they're trying to do with that. I guess maybe with he said that, okay, so yeah, here's what it says here on IMDb. The store owner's American wife knew no Japanese and had to read her lines phonetically off cue cards posted above her head. She proved to be absolutely hopeless at anything resembling proper pronunciation or competent acting. Director Takashi Miike found the result interesting and displayed the cards for simultaneously eerie and comedic effect. So it is one of these things, these happy accidents that happen on set, and I wonder if kind of like the idea of that is obviously just another way of showing something weird happening here. But also, too, this idea of we're reading from a script. We're all just kind of like playing the roles that are thrust upon us, even if they don't fit who we are. I think thematically that also works with Minami, too.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Like, again, you could go with the idea of like the line of like everything's a joke, don't take it seriously. My first thoughts was like, almost like this happens, or like people go on this specific journey, so she has this like impassioned speech because it happens all the time. That's her part. But like you say, everybody playing a role that doesn't fit, again, fits perfectly. Like that kind of fits with what I thought of. Like, oh, people come in and say this, even though like she can't say it properly, she now just reads it, But your version was much more eloquent in that, like, it's people playing roles even if they don't fit, and that's Minami is breaking his role, so to speak, as the film progresses to find who he truly is.
And again, now that works out thematically, but from what if I'm understanding this correctly, that was an accident. So I get my question is, where did this actress come from? Why did they cast her in the first place? Why was the part written this way? Or was it just a case of they were filming in this town, they needed extras for this scene, and this store owner, his wife, just happened to be American? I don't know, but I think that's a question I would have about that, because otherwise, why would you cast this woman in this movie?
I I'm sure I read somewhere that she was either the wife of the owner of the place, and like to get the place, they had to cast her, or she was like a producer's girlfriend.
Oh,
so it's like one of those, to get the
sense.
location, they had to play it, and then they're like, well, we're stuck with it. And Miike is just confident enough in himself, or like talented enough to be like, oh, we can use this. It's beautiful when you get a happy accident that works. My own film, Dead Name, had an issue where an actress had to go for a modeling job because we're not paying very well, so they get other jobs. We let them go and earn some money, and they dyed their hair, and they dyed it blue, and it should have washed out because they're blonde throughout the film, and then they come back and they're like, it's not washed out. But where the film deals with identities and things, the blue worked. We hit a perfect moment in the film where we could change their hair color for this weird effect, and it symbolically worked the story we're telling. So this literally reminds me of that helped me lean into it, actually, of the fact that Miike pulled something like this. It's like, can I pull something like that? And thankfully we did.
Yeah, necessity is the mother of invention, so that's obviously that works very well. Okay, I think that's a good note to end on, unless there are any other things you wanted to mention about the movie.
I think that's everything I can think of. I'm sure I'll have 1,000 thoughts once we wrap this up. But yeah, I think the only other thought I had was I heard recently that, so I've met some people who have worked with Miike, which has been very cool, and they say apparently he's come out of the closet recently.
Oh, really?
So
I didn't know that.
No, I haven't found anything online to go with it, but also being over here in the West, I don't know if there's official interviews or if it's just in the circles of professionals around him, he's come out with something. I really hope I'm not outing him against his will, but they seem to be very much yeah, he's finally come out. And so the gay readings and things, and a lot of because his films have always had a lot of gay content for what you expect from these genres. And I just find it's that kind of makes a lot of things fall into place.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. It would make a lot of sense with some of the themes, especially in this movie, but also a lot of his Yakuza movies, they deal a lot with this kind of there is a lot of this kind of homoerotic subtext in a lot of his stuff. So it's it would not surprise me if he did come out. The only thing I can find online is just speculation from almost 20 years ago when he's gay. So I don't know if there have been anything, at least not in English language media, and in Japanese language media too. I imagine it probably wouldn't be made that big of a deal of, but that's interesting. But anyway, Warren, thanks so much for coming on, and why don't you tell people where they can find your stuff?
Thanks for having me. This has been fantastic. I feel like I underprepared somehow, everything went blank, so it all comes out cool. But people can find me on X or Blue Sky. My name, Warren Badenski, or Warren_Badenski, and Instagram. So I'm up on that one as well. If people want to check out my film, it's on darksidereleasing.com. It's the best place to get the Blu-ray. With any luck, they'll be on Tubi or various streaming platforms by the time we're out. And yeah, that's all the places I usually go out. I don't post too often, but every now and again I'll have a splurge of posts.
Okay, great. All right, so please check out the show notes for any of that stuff. And also, as for us, we are JapanOnFilm.com is the website, and Japan on Film located on the socials, which mostly just Blue Sky, although we do post release announcements on Instagram and Threads and Facebook. And please remember, too, we are part of the Film Stories podcast network, so please make sure to listen up and check out the other shows that are on the network. That does it for now. Thanks so much for listening, and talk to you next time.
The Japan on Film podcast is produced by me, Perry Constantine, in conjunction with the Film Stories Podcast Network. Visit JapanOnFilm.com for show notes, episodes, and information about being a guest yourself. You can also reach out to me on the website's contact form if you have questions or comments about Japanese movies or the show itself. The show is at Japan on Film on Threads, Blue Sky, and Instagram, so please be sure to follow us. If you'd like to support the show, you can donate on japanonfilm.com, purchase from our advertisers, or leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Join the Film Stories Podcast Network Discord from the link in the show notes to connect with me and many other cinema fans and podcasters.